Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and to another video. Today we are going to install Arch Linux from scratch using the September 2021 ISO, and we're going to use systemd-boot and systemd-networkd and also the XFCE desktop environment. So before I start, actually let me remind you, if you want to support my work, you can become a Patreon, or if you want, you can also click the join button under the video. You will become a member of the channel. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the video. So here we go, guys. We start the installation of Arch Linux with systemd-boot and systemd-networkd. Now I'm connected via SSH to my laptop, which is the Tuxedo Pulse 15 that I have here for review. The review will follow in a few weeks anyway. And so let's get started here. I connected via SSH, as I said, so I'm gonna show you the process I did to do this. I first typed in IP space A because I wanted to find out actually the name of my Wi-Fi adapter. Since I don't have a cable for the laptop, I will need to connect to the internet via Wi-Fi. So as you can see, the interface number 4 here, it's called WLAN 0. In your machine, it might be different, it might be another name. And I have also an Ethernet interface here called ENO1. So for this video, I'm going to use the Wi-Fi, which is WLAN 0. Now, if you don't see any Wi-Fi adapter here, it might be because it's killed by default. So if it's your case, you can type in the terminal rfkill and then unblock and then Wi-Fi and then hit enter. And then run again the IP space A command and see if the Wi-Fi adapter appears now in the list. Now, once you have done that, you can type in the terminal iwctl, which is going to use the IWD utility to connect to your Wi-Fi network. Now here on the prompt, you can type in station and then the name of your Wi-Fi adapter, in my case is WLAN 0. And if you know the name of your network, you can type in already connect and then the name of the network. Or if you don't know the name of the network or you want to connect to another network, you can type in also get-networks and then hit enter. So here you will see the list of networks. You can see already I'm connected to the first one, which is the strongest one in my case, and it's using the fastest band. So once you know the network, you can type in, as I showed you before, station, and then WLAN 0, in my case, connect, and then the name of your network. Then once you have done that and you hit enter, you will be asked to enter your passphrase. And once you have done that, you will be back here to the IWD prompt, and you can type in exit, and then type in IP space A again, and you will see that you have an IP. Then we can check if we can connect to our repositories by typing in pacman-sy, and you can see I can synchronize just fine, so we are ready to start our installation. So let's type in lsblk. So this laptop has 3 partitions because I have already a system installed there. And let me type in also lspci just to show you that I am indeed actually working on the Pulse 15 from Tuxedo Computers. As you probably already know, the Pulse 15 is using an AMD processor. It's basically an AMD machine with an AMD processor and AMD graphics. Now, again, let me type in lsblk. So what I want to do, I want to partition my disk. So let's go ahead and do this by typing in gdisk. Now gdisk, because it's a UEFI machine and I need to create a GPT label, and gdisk is the tool for that, /dev/ the name of the disk, which is in my case NVMe 0N1. So in your case, it might be something like SDA or something else. You might have to replace the name of your disk here. So NVMe 0N1 is the name of my disk. Now you can see it says found valid GPT with protective MBR using GPT. So that's fine for me. So what I can do here, I can either create a new partition table or I need to delete those partitions first. So it's really up to you. In my case, I'm going to type in O and hit enter to create a new GPT label here and proceed by hitting Y. And now I can create my partitions. So N for new, and partition number 1 is the default, that's fine. It's going to always leave a little space at the beginning of the disk. That's why the first sector, it's 2048. The last sector defines the size of the disk. So I'm going to create a EFI partition in this case because it's a UEFI machine and the EFI partition is mandatory. So I'm going to create a +250 megabytes EFI partition. And the code for this partition is EF00. That's the code for EFI system partition. Then next, I'm going to type in N for new. And default number 2 is fine. The first sector is also fine here, and the last sector defines the size again. So this is going to be a very small swap partition. So I'm going to type in +512 M for megabytes, and the code is 8200. And this is now done. You can see the partition type is Linux swap. Then N for new. Partition number 3 is fine. The first sector is also fine. The last sector defines the size. So this is going to be the root partition. I have a pretty big disk here. It's a 1 terabyte SSD. So for the root partition, I'm going to go here with +450 gigabytes. That should be plenty. And the Linux file system code is fine, so I can just accept the default here, and that's done. Now I'm going to repeat the process for the home partition. So N for new. Partition number 4 is fine. First sector is fine. And the last sector is also fine. It's going to use the rest of the disk. And the code is also okay because it is a Linux file system. And now we can write those changes to the disk by typing W and accept by typing Y. And the partition table has been written. So lsblk again, you can see we have now our 4 partitions P1 to P4. So now we can proceed by formatting our partitions. Let's begin with the first partition, which is the EFI partition. mkfs.vfat. So make file system of FAT32 file system type, and that's because it's a EFI partition. /dev/nvme 0n1p1, and then hit enter. Now let's make the swap. So mkswap. And then this is going to be on P2, so /dev/nvme 0n1p2. And we need to activate the swap by typing in swap on /dev/nvme 0n1p2. Now let's format our root partition. So mkfs, I'm going to use ext4 and then /dev/nvme 0n1p3. And I'm going to use also a label. So -L, capital L, and the label for this partition is going to be arch. And I'm going to use this label afterwards when we are going to use systmed-boot. Now, because I have already a file system in here, I need to create a new one. So I'm just going to proceed here by hitting Y. And this is now done. So let me clean up the terminal with Control L and repeat the same process here for the home partition. So mkfs.ext4 and then /dev/nvme 0n1p4. That's our home partition. I'm not going to use a label here. That's going to be useful only for me in this case with the root partition. And this is also done. So lsblk, now we can proceed by mounting our partitions. So first, our root partition. We need to take care of that. Mount /dev/nvme 0n1p3. And it's going to be mounted under /mnt. And that's because the mnt directory is where we are going to install our new system. So once we have this, we need to create the directories for our EFI partition and also our home partition. We don't need to do anything for the swap. So let's go ahead and create the directories we need for the P1 and P4 partition. So mkdir for make directory /mnt, because we need to create those directory in our mount directory, which is going to be again our installation directory. I'm going to open the curly brace and create both directories at once. So boot and then also home, and then close the curly brace and then hit enter. Now, the reason I create only boot here is because in this video, I'm going to use systmed-boot. And for using systmed-boot, you need to have a boot directory or a EFI directory. It's really up to you. But if you create boot/EFI, it's not going to work. It has to be /boot or /EFI. So now let's mount our EFI directory, mount /dev/nvme 0n1p1 on /mnt/boot. And we can mount also our home partition. So mount /dev/nvme 0n1p4. And this is going to be on /mnt/home, and then hit enter. Now lsblk again, you will see there we have our mount points. So we are ready now to install the base system. And to do this, we can type in packstrap /mnt. So we are installing the base packages in our mount directory. The packages are base, the base package, the Linux kernel. So in my case, I want to install the latest Linux kernel. That's why I'm using the Linux package. If you want to use LTS, you will have to install linux-lts or -zen if you want to use the Zen kernel. And I want to install also linux-firmware, provide some extra firmware for your computer. I want to install also Git and Vim, my editor, and also AMD-U code because this laptop has an AMD processor. If you have an Intel processor, you can install, of course, Intel-U code and then hit enter. So this is going to take a couple of seconds to download and install. Depends also, of course, on the speed of your internet connection. And I can see here we are almost done with downloading. Nevertheless, I'm going to pause the video here quickly, guys, and I'll be back with you once it's done. So the packages have been installed, as you can see, and now we can proceed by generating the file system table. The file system table is the file where all our mount points are stored. So let's type in gen fstab-U. Now the capital U option basically defines the UUIDs of the partitions, and these are unique identifiers of each partition, and that's why we are going to use them in the fstab file. I could use also the label, but I didn't label all partitions, so the UUID is the safest way here. And we're going to take the mount points we have under /mnt, which we saw before, and we are going to append this information to /mnt/etc/fstab. Now, the fstab file and the etc directory were created because we installed the base packages. And what we did here, we basically took the information we have here that we see on lsblk. You can see mount, boot, mount, and home. So basically, we are taking here the boot directory, the swap, the slash, and the home directory into the fstab file. Now we can move into our installation by typing in arch-root/mnt. And now if I type in cat/etc/fstab, you will see the mount points we saw before. So you notice the difference, because for many people this is not always clear. Why do we have /mount/boot here and here not? That's because the mount directory, as I said before, it's our installation directory. So for example, here the root partition is B3, and when we mounted this under the root arch ISO, it was mounted under /mnt, which corresponds in our new installation to the slash. And as you can see, also the boot directory corresponds to the boot directory here. So /mnt/boot becomes /boot. And also for the home directory, /mnt/home becomes /home. And for the swap, we don't have any mount point. That's the way it is. So now let me proceed by downloading my script here where I can install my base system. So git clone https://gitlab.com/eflinux/arch install base. So this is my private repository, but there is also a public one. I will leave a link to it in the video description below. I need to authenticate here and also my password. And it's downloading my repository, so I can move in there. If I type in ls-l, you will see the first one on the top is arch install base. So I need to move in there, cd arch install base, ls-l again, and I want to edit the base.sh script. So vim base.sh. Now, some of you asked me actually to go through a little bit more in depth about the packages I want to install. So actually the commands here that I'm using are commands that you will find mostly on the Arch Wiki. The ln command here is basically creating a symbolic link for my time zone. Of course, you will need to replace Europe Zurich here with yours. And HW clock sys2hc is basically synchronizing the hardware clock to the system clock. The set editor is used here basically to delete the hashtag in the locale.gen file. And the line 177 corresponds to the English_US.utf-8, which is going to be used to create the locales by using the locale-gen command. Now, if you want to have more locales here, you will need to reuse this command with another line, but first you will need to check the locale.gen file to which line it corresponds, and then you can have multiple languages selected, and when you run the locale-gen file, it's going to have both in the system. Now then, I'm going to use the echo command to create also the language variable here in the locale.com file, and you'll need to repeat this if you have multiple languages. I'm also creating the key map because I don't have a US keyboard, so this is going to be done in the vconsole.com file. I'm creating the host name with the echo command, and the same also goes for the hosts file. These are standard entries that we find in the Arch Wiki. And I'm also creating a password for the root user. Now the password here is password, and of course you can change this to your liking. Now the packages I'm using here are fairly standard packages. Now you can see pacman-s no confirm. So actually I want to delete this no confirm because I want to actually confirm the packages. And I want to delete actually in this case grub, because I'm not going to use grub for this video. I'm going to use systemd-boot. And because I'm going to use also systemd network D, I'm going to also remove the network manager packages. So Dialog is a package that we use for networking. I'm not going to use WPA supplicant in this video. I'm going to use actually IWD, which is the same package we have on the Arch ISO. And the reason is because I want to connect them with Wi-Fi using this utility. mtools, DOS, FS tools are file system tools. Reflector for creating your mirror list. We have base devel and Linux headers. These are two development packages that you're gonna need sooner or later in Arch, so it's better to install them nevertheless. We have the Avahi daemon here, which is gonna help you out discover shares in your network. XDGs packages, these are for creating also home directories. GVFS and GVFS SMB are file systems for Samba and NFS. We have also NFS utils for NFS shares. iNet utils and DNS utils, these are, let's say, IP utilities. For example, hostname CTL is contained in the iNet utils here. So if you want to change your hostname by using the hostname CTL utility, you want to install these packages. If you don't need this, you can just remove them. Blues utils for your Bluetooth adapter, CAPS, the printing system, HPLIP if you have an HP printer, ALSA utils, it's basically audio utilities. Now I have also all the Pipewire packages here, but in this case I'm going to actually install also Pulse Audio. And because I'm installing Pulse Audio, I'm going to actually remove Pipewire Pulse because they are in conflict. And the reason I'm installing Pulse Audio here, it's because I'm going to install XFCE, which is better supported with Pulse Audio. Then we have also bash completion. This is self-explanatory. We have OpenSSH, rsync, which is going to be used by Reflector. And I see I have Reflector twice in here, so let me delete one. We have also ACPI and ACPI call. For power management, we have TLP, which is going to be useful on a laptop, so I'm going to leave it here. And all these packages here from Virt Manager until OpenBSD Netcat are all packages useful for Virtual Machine Manager. If you don't need this, you can just remove them. iptable, NFT, and IPset and firewall-d are all related to the firewall. I'm installing also Flatpak here, SOF firmware. This is SoundWire firmware. If you have an XPS, for example, an XPS laptop, one of the latest one, you need to install this package, otherwise your audio system will not work. NSS MDNS is basically going to be configured afterwards with the Avahi daemon for discovering shares on your network. OS Prober for discovering also other systems in your machine. NTFS 3G, if you have a Windows system also, if you're dual booting, you might need this package to discover the Windows partition and also the Terminus font. Now I want to also here install the AMD driver for my graphic card because I have an AMD card in here. And I don't need to have grub commands because I'm not going to use grub in this tutorial. And because I'm not installing Network Manager, I'm going to disable also this system here. And the other systems here are going to be enabled by systemctl enable. I'm going to also create a user with the name Hermano with the password in this case, but I'm going to change this later. And I'm going to assign also the user Hermano to libvirt. And that's because libvirt is going to be created when I'm installing Virtual Machine Manager. And I'm adding this group to Hermano because I don't want to type the sudo password every time I use Virtual Machine Manager. And I'm also giving Hermano sudo privileges by adding this to the sudoers.d directory. And that's all there is to it. So we can basically here save this file and exit Vim and give this script execute permissions. So chmod +x on base.sh. And I go back to the root file system and run it from there. So /archinstall-base and base.sh. So it's going to generate everything for me. Now I need to confirm the selection here. So because I want to install XFCE, what I'm going to install is XDG Desktop Portal GTK. So default number 1 is fine. So iptable NFT and iptables are in conflict. So I remove iptables and I can proceed with the installation. So this is going to take about 1 minute to install. So I'm going to pause the video here, guys, and I'll be back with you once it's done. So the packages are installed and the services are enabled. So we need to do still a couple of steps before we can reboot the machine. The first one is we need to put, in this case, the AMD GPU module in our initramfs. So to do this, we can type in vim/etc/mkinitcpio.conf, and we go down to the modules, which are essentially the drivers, and adding in here AMD GPU. And that's because I have an AMD card. If you have an NVIDIA card, it's NVIDIA. If you have an Intel card, it's i915. And you can add also multiple drivers in here with a space in between. Then we can save this file and exit Vim. And we can recreate the initramfs by typing in mkinit cpio-p on Linux. It's going to take a moment here to recreate our initramfs with the AMD module already in it. And there we go, this is now done. So next we need to create our systmed-boot. Now with systmed-boot you will need to pay attention to a couple of things. First of all, if you want to dual boot with Windows and you are dual booting on one disk only, you will have to mount the EFI partition in your Linux machine in the same EFI partition that Windows has. So depending how big that is, that might work or that might not work. The reason for that is if you have, for example, a second disk and you create a second EFI partition for your Linux machine and you are installing systmed-boot in there, you will not be able to dual boot because systmed-boot needs to be in the same partition as the Windows boot manager. It cannot be in a separate EFI partition. If you want to install Linux on a second disk and on a second EFI partition, you will have to use another bootloader like grep or refind. With systemd, it's going to work only if the EFI partition is going to be the same as the Windows partition. That is, if you want to dual boot, of course. If not, no worries, it's going to work nevertheless. So to use systmed-boot, it's fairly simple. We need to type in boot ctl and then install and then hit enter. So the entries were created. You can see there it created the bootloader directory. So what we need to do, we need to go in there because we need to configure the loader. So cd/boot/loader and then hit enter. ls-l here. You will see we have entries, which is a directory. You can tell it's a directory because we have D here on the left side. And we have the loader.conf. These two are the ones we need to work on. So let's begin with the loader.conf because that's basically the configuration for the loader itself. So vim loader.conf. So it's up to you to decide if you want to have a timeout or not. In my case, I do. So I'm just going to remove the hashtag and put the timeout to 5 seconds. This will give me enough time, for example, to edit the kernel parameter at runtime and so on. By console mode here, I'm gonna go for max because I want the console mode to pick up the maximum resolution of my display. And the default system I want to actually boot is arch.conf, which does not exist yet because we need to create it into the entries directory we saw before. But that's all there is to it here. So we can just save this file and exit Vim. And now we can move into the entries directory we have up here. So cd entries. ls here, you will see we have nothing. So we need to create the arch.conf entry that we just defined in the loader. So vim arch.conf. And now we have several parameters to add to our entry. So first the title. And I move with the tab key and I'm going to call the machine arch Linux. Next, it's Linux. So the kernel. The kernel is going to be /vm linux with the z -linux. And that's all there is to it. Now, the next is the initrd. And first, I'm going to also put in here the AMD-Ucode microprocessor firmware that we installed at the beginning of the video, .img. And I need to put also the initrd. And that's going to be the initramfs-linux.img for image. And the last option is options. Now, options, we are going to define here the root partition we want to boot. And here I'm going to use the label I used for the root partition. So equal to quotes label equal arch, because we called our root partition arch. Then close the quotes and also read and write. So this is all there is to it for booting our system with systmed-boot. So we can save this file and exit Vim. Now let's go back to the home directory here, because we need to work also on the systemd network D, because when I will reboot my machine, I need to work with the Wi-Fi adapter. Now, first of all, I want to make sure that the IWD service is going to be up and running when I reboot my machine. So I can type in here systemctl enable IWD. And I want to enable also systemd network D, but first I want to create the interface for that. Now on my laptop here, I want to use the Wi-Fi adapter. So I want to create an interface for that. And so I need to type in here vim/etc/systemd/network and then /25-wireless.network and then hit enter. Now this file here will have two parameters. So I'm going to put in here the square bracket and type in here match and close the square bracket. So this is basically going to match the Wi-Fi adapter I have in my system. So the name is going to be equal to WLAN0 in my case, because that's the name of my Wi-Fi adapter. You will replace this with yours, of course. And the second parameter is, again with the square bracket, network. Closing the square bracket. And here I want to use DHCP. I want to get basically a dynamic IP address. This is going to be in the most cases for most users. So I can type in here equal to yes. You can also have a static address in here. I will leave a link to the ArchWiki where it's also showing an example for that. But for most cases here, the DHCP is going to work just fine. So then we can save this file and exit Vim. And the interface is now configured. Now we need to activate systemd network D. So let's type in systemctl enable systemd-network D and hit enter. And that's actually not enough, because if we would run when we start our machine again, the Wi-Fi adapter, we are going to have an error because we cannot resolve the servers. And that's because systemd resolve D is also not active, and we need to activate that when we reboot our machine. So systemctl enable systemd-resolve D and hit enter. So now the system is set. So what we can do, we can type in here exit, and we need to unmount our partitions. So umount-R/MNT, and this is done. So I'm going to type in exit here because I need to go back to my laptop to exit SSH, and I'm going to reboot the laptop there. So I'm going to reboot the laptop, guys, and I'm going to connect back via SSH here. So I'm going to meet you back here in a second. So I am back in my laptop, guys, via SSH. If I type in lspci here, you will see I have the same AMD entries here. So what I had to do when I boot up the laptop, I had to type in iwctl again, exactly like we did at the beginning of the video. And I typed in station and then the name of my adapter and then connect and then the name of my network. And then when you hit enter, you will enter your passphrase. And then when you will be back to the IWD prompt, you can type in again exit. And when you will type in IP space A, you should have an IP. As you can see here, my IP is 138. So that means systemd-boot was correctly configured, systemd network D as well. Now the thing is, with systemd network D, you will have to be careful which desktop environment you will choose, because systemd network D does not provide a system tray, so you will not have your icons there. And some desktop environments, like for example GNOME or Cinnamon, do require you to have Network Manager if you want to use the graphical interface in the system settings. Of course, you can use also without it, but if you go to the Wi-Fi settings, for example in GNOME, you will see an error saying that Network Manager is not running. So it's really up to you. I'm going to install XFCE in this video because that does not require Network Manager, and I'm fine by managing my interfaces with systemd network D anyway. So we are now set up and continue our installation. So what I want to do, I want to make sure that I can synchronize my servers. So again, sudo pacman-sy. I need to authenticate, of course, and you can see we are connecting just fine. So another thing that I would like to show you here as a bonus tip is how you can configure your pacman configuration. So sudo vim/etc/pacman.conf. And what I do all the time, I'm just going to use the color option here And I'm going to use also the verbose package list. And that's because, especially when you are upgrading the system, you're going to be shown the new version and the old version in number. So you will see the different version between the two, and then you can decide whether you want to install or not. And another bonus tip that I want to show you is the I love candy option. You might have seen in some distributions like, for example, Endeavor OS or other distributions, when you update your system, you'll have a little animation, and that's because it has the I love candy in the configuration file. So we can save this file and exit. And now when we are going to install packages for XFCE, you will see what I mean. Now we have our repository in our root file system, so we need to copy it over here. So cp-r on arch install base, and we're going to copy it over in our home directory by using the ls-l. You can see arch install base is on the top, so we need to go in there, cd arch install base, and again ls-l, and I have my XFCE script there, so I can type in here vim xfce.sh, and I want to edit a couple of things here. So the first one, I want to actually edit the reflector line. I want to have mirrors that were synchronized only since 2 hours instead of 12. And I'm going to resynchronize them afterwards just to make sure. And I don't need to actually use the peak AUR here, so I can just delete these packages. And here are the packages I'm using for XFCE. So basically not much here. I have Xorg because it's required. I have LightDM GTK Greeter. This is the display manager and also its settings. The 2 packages for XFCE are here. I have Firefox as a browser, and then I have my utilities like Simple Screen Recorder, which I don't actually need to use because I'm using most of the time OBS Studio. So let me remove this. And I have OBS Studio already here. I have VLC and a bunch of fonts. Now there is a font which is not anymore in the base repositories. So I need to remove here the font PHTTF. And the rest is all fonts I need for browsing the internet and also for writing certain documents in Asian languages. Then I don't want to install Spotify here for now, and also I don't need to install Kdenlive. And I don't want to make the system sleep and reboot automatically. I want to do this manually. So this is all there is to it for XFCE. So let's just save this file and exit Vim. And we need to give this script execute permissions again. So +X on XFCE. And I'm going to go back to the home directory and run it from there. So /arch install base xfce.sh. So first of all, it's going to create the mirror list based on my country and my parameters. And then it should install the packages for XFCE, opening the firewall ports, and now it's installing. Now you can see here, this is the animation that you get when you put the I love candy parameter into the pacman.com file. So you might have seen this in other distributions. So now you know how to do it. So this is going to take a moment to install, guys. I'll pause the video here and I'll be back with you once it's done. So the packages are installed, and you can see also the last line there, created symlink for the display manager, which has been activated. That means now we can reboot our machine and we should be greeted by the LightDM display manager, and we can log in into XFCE. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to switch over to my laptop. Well, first of all, I'm going to actually exit SSH, and I'm going to go to my laptop and reboot it, and I'm going to meet you back there in a moment. So here we are in XFCE, guys, on the laptop, and so the installation was successful. Now what I'm going to do is, so I'm just going to customize a little bit XFCE, not too much, but just a little bit, so that we have a little bit different interface and colors and wallpapers. So first thing, let me open up the terminal here, and let's install the Arch Linux wallpapers that we didn't install before anyway. So sudo pacman-s Arch Linux wallpaper, and hit enter, and we need to authenticate, of course, and let's install the packages. And let me do the same also for the Papyrus icon theme, and actually let me show you something else. Papyrus icon theme. And so you can see, this is what I told you before when you enable that show package list in pacman.conf. So you will see the new version in this case, because there is no older version, the net change and the download size. So this can be useful information when you upgrade your system, for example. So let's go ahead and install the Papyrus icon theme here. It's going to take a second to do that. And so there we go. So let's close up this and open up the control center here. Go to applications and settings manager. I'm gonna go to appearance, select Arc Dark, which was already pre-installed. And for the icons, I'm gonna go with Papyrus Dark. And that's all there is to it for here. So we can just close this up. And next, let's right click on the desktop and go to desktop settings. And you can see here our XFCE wallpapers. Now the folder is XFCE, but I want to go to the Arch Linux folder. So I cannot actually go from here. I have to go to others. And then instead of XFCE here, I can choose Arch Linux and then click open. And here I have my Arch wallpapers. So I'm going to pick one. Let's pick this one right here. And we can close this up. So it's looking already a little bit better to my eyes, at least. This is, of course, everything personal preference. So what I want to do, I want to customize these panels a little. So I will take away this panel because I don't want to have that one. I want to have a little different one. So I'm just going to right click here and click on panel and panel preferences. I'm going to go to panel number 2 and I'm going to delete it. And for the panel number 1, I'm going to customize this as well a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to appearance. And for the background, I'm going to go to style and choose a solid color. Now I'm going to go here for a custom color and I'm going to go for black, but I'm going to make it slightly more transparent. It's going to pick up a little bit more the wallpaper background basically, and click select. And then I'm going to go to items and I'm going to change this a little bit as well. So first of all, I'm going to add another menu because I prefer to have actually the whisker menu, which is already there by default. And I want to close this up, and by default it's going to be listed at the end here. So I'm just going to click this and move it at the top of the list. And I can also remove now this applications menu here and click remove. Now I don't want to have also the Windows button here because I'm going to change this a little later. So I'm going to click this and click remove. And I'm going to do the same for the separator and also for the workspace switcher because I honestly don't need it. So I want to have my stuff on the right side again. So I'm going to go to the separator here, choose the options and click expand so it goes back to the right side and click close. Now you see a little bit of ghosting here. That's because I'm recording with OBS Studio and it's always a little difficult on a 4K monitor here. But nevertheless, I'm going to click close here and I'm going to customize this menu. So I'm going to right click and click properties and I'm going to show as 3. And for the panel button, I'm going to go with icon and title, but the title is going to be menu. And the icon here, I'm going to choose a different kind of icon. We have the Arch Linux icon here. It's going to take a moment to pull up all the icons in the system. And I'm going to go here for all icons and choose Arch and then select here one of the logos and then click OK and click close. So I have my Arch Linux menu up here. So next I want to change this applet here for the action buttons. I'm going to go to properties. Instead of session menu, I'm going to choose action buttons, and I don't need to switch user because I have only one user here, and I don't need suspend, but I want to have a restart, and I'm going to leave the rest as it is and click close. So now I want to actually install another dock here. So I'm just going to open up the terminal and let me actually go here, put it a little bit here in the middle and increase it font size. So we don't have any helper for the AUR, so I'm going to install one very quickly. So I'm going to type in git clone https://aur.archlinux.org/paru-bin. I'm going to install the binary for Paru. It's taking a little bit less time. I'm going to move into the Paru directory and make pkg-si. So it's going to take a moment to download the repository and install the binary. I need to authenticate and proceed with the installation, and Paru is now installed. So let's install the dock I want to have, which is dock-like. So I'm going to type in paru-s and then xfce4-dock-like and then -plugin and then hit enter. And I'm going to choose the first repository here and proceed to the review. You can quit out of it and proceed with the installation. It's going to take a moment to install the dependencies, and then it's going to download the plugin and build it up. So this is going to take a moment. I'm going to pause the video here, guys, and I'll be back with you once it's finished. So it's now installed, so I can close the terminal up, and I can right click on the panel and click panel preferences, and I want to create a new panel, which is going to appear right here, but we're going to change this in a second anyway. I'm going to make the length to 0 because I want it to increase automatically, but I don't want it to take too much space when there are no icons available. I'm going to go to appearance here, and I'm going to use again the solid color that I used for the first panel. So I'm going to select the custom color I created before, and I'm going to go to items and click add and search for dock-like taskbar and click add, and now click close. So you can close this one up, and we can move now the panel on the bottom. Now you'll have to be careful here. If you move it toward the bottom and in the middle, it will snap into place. You will feel it when it's there. There you go. And so now what happens is, if I open up a new window, you can right click here on the icon and click pin to dock, and you will have your icon there. So let me also one more time actually lock the panel in place. So I can right click here on the handles and click lock panel. So you can see what I mean here. If I open up something else, let's say, for example, we open up our browser, so Firefox, we can pin this as well to the dock, and we will have it here when we close our browser. And there you go. So the last thing I want to show you is actually, because this is a Tuxedo computer, what you can install here is the Tuxedo Control Center. Paru-S and then Tuxedo control center-bin and hit enter. We can proceed here with the review and accept it and proceed with the installation. So this is going to take a moment to install, so I'll be back with you guys once it's finished. So the package is now installed. That means if we close the terminal up and we go to search for it, we should have it here in the list. There you go, Tuxedo Control Center. So we can open this up, and here we can basically set the settings that we usually would set for our laptop. So I'm going to go more in depth about this utility when I will have the review for the laptop, but just so you know how you can install it. So this is all there is to it for the Arch Linux installation with the September ISO, with systmed-boot, systemd-networkd, and the XFCE desktop environment. So this was the monthly installation of Arch Linux using the September 2021 ISO. We used systemd-boot and also systemd-networkd with the XFCE desktop environment. If you have any question about the video, let me know in the comments below, and I will try to answer you as soon as I can. And again, I remind you, if you want to support my work, you can become a Patreon, or if you want, you can click the join button under the video. You will become a member of the channel. Thank you so much, guys, for watching the video. I really appreciate that, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.